Caden moved through the fractured corridors of the orbital outpost with a calm that surprised even him as alarms rang in metallic echoes and harsh red lights cut across the walls while he searched for survivors among the wreckage caused by the skirmish that had erupted without warning between his patrol unit and the visiting delegation, whose ship had suffered a catastrophic malfunction that sent debris and flamed through the docking bay and left both sides scrambling for safety amid confusion rather than hostility in the cold vacuum that now seeped through broken hull plates. He had been trained to expect treachery, yet what he found instead was a small child cowering behind a collapsed support strut, where vapor hissed from ruptured lines, and the thin figure shielded its face with trembling hands, even as the trembling deck plates threatened to give way beneath them, forcing Caden to halt his advance and make a choice driven less by protocol and more by instinct that recognized fear as universal across species who sought life rather than conflict. The child had delicate features marked by luminous markings across its cheeks, and its large eyes held no malice, only terror and confusion as Caden approached slowly with his hands raised to show he carried no weapon, ready to guide the child toward the evacuation path. Yet before he could reach safety, a secondary breach tore through the air, hurling shards of metal toward them with lethal force and leaving no time for calculation. In that instant he threw himself across the child's small form, feeling the blow pierce his armor and drive a jolt of pain through his ribs as he folded his body around the figure, knowing only that no being deserved to suffer because two sides lacked understanding, and the deck shook again as emergency bulkheads tried to seal the expanding tear in the hull, while the child whimpered beneath him, waiting for the storm to settle. When rescue crews arrived with pressurized shields and medtech drones, they found Caden barely conscious, still holding the child close and refusing to let go until the medics assured him that the young one was safe and unhurt, which allowed him to collapse into their arms before darkness swallowed his senses, leaving the confusion behind for the machines to stabilize him and assess the internal injuries caused by the blast. He awoke in the infirmary, where filtered sunlight from artificial panels cast a warm glow across rows of recovery units, and soft hums of monitors surrounded him while he struggled to sit up despite the bandages across his chest. Yet, as he steadied himself, he saw not a medic, but a tall figure with smooth silver skin and deep violet eyes standing at the foot of his bed, watching him with an expression he could not immediately interpret, for it held gratitude, awe, and something like guarded determination. Her name was Lyra, and she introduced herself in the measured voice of someone carrying both authority and responsibility, explaining that she was the child's mother and a representative of the diplomatic team assigned to negotiate resource rights around the asteroid belt, and that her child had wandered from the secure zone moments before the accident, leaving her in frantic search until reports of a human soldier shielding the child had reached her through emergency channels. Caden listened as she spoke with precision and sincerity, describing how the act had altered not only her perception of humanity, but also the tone of their entire mission for under her species cultural code anyone who risked life to protect. A young one became bound to the family through a pledge of mutual guardianship, and while Caden tried to dismiss his action as simple duty, she insisted that the code was not symbolic, but binding and honored across generations. This left him speechless as she stepped closer, explaining that her people believed such an act created a bridge between lives, and that she had come not to burden him but to offer him a place within their circle, acknowledging that he might decline, yet making clear that she would fulfill her cultural obligation regardless by supporting him and recognizing him as protector of her child, whose life now intertwined with his through deed rather than ancestry. He tried to argue that he was merely doing what anyone trained for rescue would do, but Lyra shook her head gently, insisting that action taken without hesitation or expectation of reward carried greater meaning, and that her child, whose name he Learned was Rin now asked for him during every waking moment in the medical bay, where the young one spoke of bright, armor-worn shield and safe breath, thus weaving Caden into their story as firmly as any kin. After recovering enough to walk, Caden visited the diplomatic wing, where reinforced glass panels displayed vast views of nearby asteroids spinning like ancient giants, and there he found Rin playing with small glowing spheres that hung softly, while forming intricate patterns, and when the child saw him, a delighted chirp rang out as Rin ran to him with outstretched arms, causing Lyra to watch with quiet warmth behind them, as if witnessing a prophecy becoming real. The following rotations brought unprecedented cooperation between the two species as Lyra requested Caden's presence during key negotiations, not as a soldier, but as an honored guardian, whose presence symbolized trust and unity, pushing both sides to abandon suspicion and embrace shared purpose, while Caden adjusted slowly to the idea that his split-second choice had become a diplomatic turning point in a region long plagued by fragmented alliances. He found himself learning aspects of their culture from Lyra, who taught him the significance of the glowing markings on Rin's cheeks, which adjusted according to emotional resonance, allowing him to understand when Rin felt comfort, curiosity, or joy, and in return, he taught them aspects of human life, including humor, improvisation, and the stubborn resilience that humans carried like an invisible engine powering them through hardship, which Lyra regarded with fascination. Yet beneath the cooperation, a deeper transformation unfolded inside Caden, for he realized that Lyra did not simply treat him as an honored figure bound by tradition, but as someone she respected on a personal level, and though she held herself with dignified composure, he sensed her gratitude extending beyond obligation into something warmer, shaped by the trust that had formed through shared moments rather than diplomatic necessity. During a quiet cycle aboard the observation deck, where stellar currents shimmered like flowing rivers of light, Lyra approached him and spoke of the future, explaining that her people's code bound them together not in ownership, but in recognition of shared responsibility, meaning she wished for him to remain part of their lives, wherever that path might lead, and though she offered him freedom, she hoped he would choose to stay near them, as the bond had already taken root. Caden considered the path ahead, feeling the weight of his military duties and the pull of a life tied to exploration, yet he also saw Rin's trusting gaze and Lyra's steady presence forming a new constellation in his future where he could stand, not only as protector, but as bridge between species, bringing strength, compassion, and human resolve into a relationship woven by choice rather than blood or command. In the end, he chose to remain with the delegation as liaison and guardian, accepting his place within Lyra's family circle and stepping into a role that felt larger than any uniform he had worn before, for now he carried not only duty, but belonging, and the belief that humanity's greatest strength lay not in conquest, but in the courage to shield even the smallest life in the darkest hour, changing the fate of worlds through simple actions made without hesitation. And so Caden walked beside Lyra and Rin as they prepared to depart for the next phase of negotiations, with new purpose guiding him, while the orbital outpost repaired itself, piece by piece, symbolizing the renewal that followed their shared ordeal. And as the stars stretched before them like endless invitations, he understood that the universe offered bridges waiting to be built, and he had taken the first step by choosing compassion when it mattered most.